A billionaire, Friedrich Hoffmann, dated for 10 years and finally married his great love, Ingrid Weber. But no one could have imagined that. How far would you go to protect the love of your life, even when everything you believe in starts to fall apart? Before we continue, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching the video from. And don't forget to subscribe. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the picturesque German town of Baden-Baden. Vibrant banners flapped gently in the warm summer breeze, announcing the annual summer fair. Laughter and music filled the air as families and friends meandered through the stalls, their faces lit with joy. In the midst of this lively spectacle, a young couple stood hand in hand, their hearts entwined in a bond that had begun years earlier. Friedrich Hoffmann, with his tousled chestnut hair and bright blue eyes, looked down at Ingrid Weber. She was radiant, her long, dark hair cascading over her shoulders and her cheeks flushed with excitement. The summer fair had always been a special place for them, a canvas painted with the memories of their youth. As they wandered from stall to stall, sampling sweet treats and trying their luck at games, the world around them faded into a blur. "Friedrich, look!" Ingrid exclaimed, pointing toward a booth adorned with colorful lights. It was a ring toss, the prizes glimmering enticingly as the carnival lights flickered. "Let's try that." He grinned, his heart swelling with affection. "All right, but if I win, you have to let me take you on the Ferris wheel." "Deal," she laughed, her voice light and musical. Friedrich stepped up to the booth, carefully taking aim at the rings. With a flick of his wrist, he tossed one, and it landed perfectly on a bottle. The barker clapped his hands in delight, handing over a small stuffed bear. "Look at you, Mr. Champion!" Ingrid cheered, her eyes twinkling with admiration. He handed her the bear, and she hugged it tightly, as if it were a cherished possession. Just then, music from the carousel wafted through the air, and Friedrich felt a surge of courage. "Ingrid," he said, his voice suddenly serious, "there's something I want to do." "What is it?" she asked, her brow furrowing with curiosity. Taking a deep breath, Friedrich led her away from the bustling crowd to a secluded spot behind a food stall. The sounds of the fair faded, replaced by the soft rustle of leaves and distant laughter. He turned to her, his heart racing. "Ingrid, do you remember our first summer fair together? The way we laughed and danced under the stars?" "Of course," she replied, her eyes misting over with nostalgia. "It was magical." Friedrich took her hands in his, feeling the warmth of her skin. "I've thought about that day a lot. You mean everything to me. I've loved you for so long, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Ingrid's breath caught in her throat as his words sank in. "Friedrich." He knelt on one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "Ingrid Weber, will you marry me?" Tears brimming in her eyes, Ingrid nodded vigorously, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, yes, I will." She threw her arms around him, and he slipped the ring onto her finger. It sparkled like the stars above them, a promise of their future together. As they embraced, the world around them faded once again into the background. The laughter of children, the music of the fair. It all vanished, leaving just the two of them suspended in a moment of pure bliss. Years passed, and the summer fair had come to symbolize more than just a joyous celebration for Friedrich and Ingrid. It had become a testament to their love story. Now, standing on the banks of the Rhine River, Friedrich felt the weight of anticipation in the air. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink as he prepared for another monumental moment in their lives. Ingrid stood beside him, her laughter echoing against the tranquil waters. They had returned to this beloved spot, a place that held countless memories. "Can you believe it's been 10 years since that day?" she said, glancing at the ring glimmering on her finger. Friedrich chuckled, a mixture of pride and nostalgia swelling in his chest. "It feels like just yesterday. You were so surprised when I proposed. I remember how you thought I was joking. Who wouldn't? You were just a goofy teenager," she teased, playfully nudging him. "And you were the most beautiful girl in school," he countered, leaning closer. "And still are." As the last rays of sunlight danced on the water's surface, Friedrich took a deep breath, feeling a surge of emotion as he looked into Ingrid's eyes. "I've loved you since that first kiss at the summer fair, Ingrid. Every day, I've cherished our journey together." Ingrid smiled, her heart fluttering. "I've loved you too, Friedrich. You've always been my rock, my best friend." He reached into his pocket, pulling out another small box, his heart racing with excitement and nerves. "I want to make it official once and for all." Ingrid's eyes widened in surprise, and he knelt down once again, this time on the banks of the Rhine, the water shimmering like 1,000 stars. "Ingrid Weber, will you marry me again?" Tears of joy streamed down Ingrid's face as she nodded, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." With a triumphant smile, Friedrich slipped the ring onto her finger, the moment feeling surreal as they embraced tightly, the world around them blurring once more. The Rhine flowed gently beside them, a witness to their unbreakable bond. As the weeks turned into months, the couple immersed themselves in the preparations for their wedding. The fairy tale ceremony was a culmination of their love story, filled with laughter, tears, and the support of family and friends. On a glorious day adorned with sunshine, they stood before their loved ones in a picturesque chapel, surrounded by blooming flowers and fragrant greenery. Ingrid was breathtaking in her gown, delicate lace cascading down her figure, while Friedrich looked dapper in a tailored suit. As they exchanged vows, their voices trembled with emotion, pledging their hearts to one another in front of the people who mattered most. "I promise to love you, in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health," Ingrid declared, her eyes locked onto Friedrich's. "And I promise to cherish and respect you, to support your dreams, and to always be there for you," Friedrich replied, his voice filled with conviction. With those words, they sealed their vows with a kiss, a promise of everlasting love. Cheers erupted from the crowd as they were declared husband and wife, the joy palpable in the air, laughter mingling with heartfelt applause. The reception that followed was a celebration of their journey, a blend of tradition and personal touches that reflected their unique story. Friends and family danced, shared stories, and reveled in the love that filled the room. As the newlyweds shared their first dance, their hearts swelled with happiness, the past behind them, and the future a beautiful canvas yet to be painted. But as the evening wore on and the stars twinkled overhead, a sense of excitement and anticipation filled the air. They were ready to embark on their honeymoon, the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. With hands clasped tightly together, they stepped into the night, their hearts full of dreams for the future, unaware of the storm that awaited them just around the corner. The Swiss Alps unfolded like a majestic canvas, their towering peaks capped with glistening snow under the warm embrace of the midday sun. Friedrich Hoffmann and Ingrid Weber stood at the edge of a sparkling lake, the crystalline water reflecting the breathtaking scenery around them. It was their honeymoon, a time that should have been filled with unadulterated joy, yet an invisible weight tugged at Friedrich's heart. They had waited a decade for this moment, their love story blossoming from innocent beginnings to the passionate commitment they had just made. Ingrid was radiant, her laughter echoing off the mountains like a melody. "Can you believe we're finally here?" she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. She took a few steps closer to the water, her lavender dress billowing gently in the breeze. Friedrich watched her, a smile creeping across his face. How could he have been so lucky? "I can't," he replied, his voice warm with affection. "It feels like a dream." Ingrid turned to face him, a teasing grin on her lips. "Then let's make it unforgettable. Let's take some pictures." She fished out her camera from her backpack, her enthusiasm infectious. "Just promise me you won't climb any trees or get too close to the edge," he chuckled, recalling their childhood antics. "Who, me?" she laughed, feigning innocence. "Never." She struck a playful pose, her hands on her hips, her hair dancing around her shoulders. Friedrich shook his head in mock disapproval, but he couldn't help but capture the moment on his own phone. As he snapped a picture, he felt a surge of warmth wash over him. Would they always be this happy? The thought lingered like a sweet aftertaste, but his instincts whispered caution. They spent the next hour exploring the area around the lake. Friedrich pointed out wildflowers, and Ingrid delighted in discovering the vibrant colors hidden beneath the emerald grass. They shared stories and dreams, weaving intricate tapestries of their future together. "Someday, we'll come back here with our kids," Ingrid said, her voice soft and dreamy. Friedrich's heart swelled at the thought. "Absolutely. I can already picture it. 2 little ones running around, making a ruckus." He paused, imagining their life ahead. "I want to show them everything. The mountains, the lakes, the world." Ingrid's eyes shone with love as she leaned in closer. "And I want to teach them all about the beauty of nature, to love it as much as we do." As they walked along the shoreline, Ingrid suddenly stopped, her gaze fixed on the shimmering water. "Look at that. The reflection is perfect." She moved closer to the edge, her excitement palpable as she raised her camera to capture the moment. "Careful, Ingrid," Friedrich called out, instinctively reaching for her hand. "I'm fine, Friedrich. Just a little closer," she insisted, determination etched across her features. But the ground was slippery, the stones coated with a thin layer of moisture. Just as she steadied herself for the perfect shot, her foot slipped beneath her. In an instant, the joy in her eyes transformed into sheer terror as she plummeted into the icy lake with a splash that shattered the serene atmosphere. "Ingrid!" Friedrich screamed, his heart racing as panic surged through him. He rushed to the edge, his mind racing with thoughts he could barely comprehend. The lake's surface rippled violently where she had fallen, but there was no sign of her. Desperation clawed at him as he scanned the water, longing for even a glimpse of her bright dress. "Hang on, Ingrid. I'm coming." Without a moment's hesitation, he plunged into the frigid water, the shock sending a jolt through his body. The cold enveloped him like a vice, but he pushed through the numbing sensation, determined to find her. With swift strokes, he dove beneath the surface, his eyes straining to catch sight of her. The darkness of the water was disorienting, the silence deafening as he fought against the currents. Friedrich's heart raced as he searched blindly, his lungs burning for air. Just when he thought he couldn't hold his breath any longer, he caught a glimpse of something. Ingrid, her figure still and sinking. He reached her, wrapping his arms around her waist, and kicked hard toward the surface. The world above was a blur of light and shadows, but he refused to let go. With every ounce of strength, he propelled them both upward, breaking through the surface with a gasp. "Ingrid!" he shouted, his voice raw with fear. She was unresponsive, her body limp in his arms as he dragged her back to the shore, collapsing as he reached the gravelly bank. He laid her down gently, his heart pounding in his chest as he frantically checked for signs of life. "Please, Ingrid, wake up," he begged, shaking her shoulders gently. Time seemed to stand still as he desperately searched her face for any sign of awareness. His mind raced with memories of their laughter, their dreams, the love they had shared. "You can't leave me. Not now. Not after everything." In that moment, the world faded away, and all that remained was the overwhelming fear that threatened to consume him. He pressed his fingers to her neck, searching for a pulse, praying for the reassurance that she was still with him. It felt like an eternity before he felt a faint heartbeat, but it was there, beating weakly beneath his fingertips. Relief flooded through him, but as he looked down at her pale face, the gravity of the situation settled in. "Help! Someone, please!" he shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. Within moments, the serenity of the mountains was shattered by the arrival of hikers who had heard his cries. They rushed to his side, their faces a mixture of concern and urgency. "What happened?" one of them asked, kneeling beside Ingrid. "She fell in. She's not waking up," Friedrich exclaimed, his voice trembling as he pointed toward the water. Without hesitation, the group sprang into action. One individual called for an ambulance while others began to administer first aid. Friedrich's hands shook as he watched them work, his mind racing with fear and disbelief. "Stay with me, Ingrid," he whispered, brushing a damp strand of hair from her forehead. "You're going to be okay. Just hold on." But as the minutes passed, each second felt like an eternity. The distant wail of sirens echoed through the valley, a haunting reminder of how quickly life could change. When the paramedics arrived, they took over, gently lifting Ingrid onto a stretcher. Friedrich's heart shattered as they prepared to transport her, the reality of the situation crashing down like a wave. "Is she going to be okay?" he asked, his voice choked with emotion. The paramedic offered a reassuring nod, but his eyes betrayed the seriousness of the situation. "We'll do everything we can. You need to come with us." Friedrich climbed into the ambulance, his heart heavy with dread. He held Ingrid's hand tightly, the warmth of her skin a stark contrast to the icy grip of fear that enveloped him. As they sped down the winding roads toward the hospital, every bump and turn felt like an eternity. Memories of their shared laughter, their dreams of a future together, and the love they had fought so hard to build flooded his mind, each one a stark reminder of what was at stake. "Please," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the blaring sirens. "Come back to me, Ingrid. I can't imagine my life without you." In that moment, as the ambulance raced toward the unknown, Friedrich realized that their love had been a beacon of light in the darkest of times. And now, he was willing to fight for her with everything he had, no matter the cost. Friedrich Hoffmann sat in the dimly lit hospital room, the rhythmic beeping of the machines surrounding him punctuating the silence. His fingers gently brushed Ingrid's hair, which lay tousled on the stark white pillow, a sharp contrast to her pale skin. She looked so peaceful, yet so fragile. It had been days since the accident, and the weight of uncertainty hung heavily over him. Each minute felt like an eternity, each second filled with dread as he feared the worst, though he clung to hope like a lifeline. He glanced around the room, taking in the sterile environment that felt both foreign and suffocating. The walls were painted a muted green, and the scent of antiseptic lingered in the air, a constant reminder of the precariousness of life. His gaze returned to Ingrid, remembering the vibrant woman she had always been. The laughter that rang like music, the light in her eyes that could brighten even the darkest of days. "Please, Ingrid," he whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. "Come back to me. We have so much left to do together." He closed his eyes, envisioning their future, traveling the world, building their dream home, raising a family. Each dream felt like a thread woven tightly into the fabric of their love, and now that fabric was fraying, threatening to unravel entirely. As he sat there, memories flooded his mind. He recalled their first kiss at the summer fair, the glow of the Ferris wheel illuminating their youthful faces, and how they had promised to always find their way back to each other, no matter the distance or the challenges life threw their way. That promise felt more fragile now than ever. Days turned into a blur, and Friedrich found himself in a routine of hope and despair. He would arrive at the hospital before dawn and stay until the nurses urged him to take a break. He read to Ingrid, sharing stories about their past, recounting inside jokes and adventures, hoping that somehow, some part of her could hear him. "I remember the time we got lost on that hiking trail," he chuckled softly one morning, "and you insisted we were going the right way, but it turns out we were 2 hours off course." He smiled at the memory, but it quickly faded as he looked at her still form. "You always were stubborn, but I love that about you. You challenged me in ways I never expected." As the days stretched on, an anxious tension filled the air, and Friedrich couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. He began receiving anonymous messages on his phone. At first, they seemed harmless, almost benign. Simple texts that echoed a sentiment he felt in his heart. "Don't lose hope." But as the days passed, the messages turned cryptic, hinting at secrets about Ingrid that he had never known. "Be careful who you trust," one message read, sending a chill down his spine. Another claimed, "Ingrid has a past you don't know about." Each text left him more unsettled than the last, stirring a pot of suspicion and doubt within him. Who could be sending these? And why? One evening, after a particularly difficult day where Ingrid had shown no signs of waking, Friedrich sat in the hospital cafeteria, his hands wrapped tightly around a cup of coffee. He stared blankly at the steam rising, lost in thought. Suddenly, his phone buzzed, breaking his reverie. It was another message. He hesitated, heart racing, before opening it. "Do you really think she's the person you believe her to be?" The words felt like a stab in the gut, and he quickly glanced around, half expecting someone to reveal themselves. But the cafeteria was empty, and he was alone with his thoughts. Why would someone do this? He murmured to himself, frustration bubbling to the surface. The more he pondered, the more he felt the walls closing in. These messages were disrupting his ability to focus on what truly mattered. Ingrid's recovery. He resolved to confront the cinder. He couldn't let paranoia consume him, especially when Ingrid needed him to be strong. But as he thought of ways to track down the mysterious messenger, a darker suspicion crept into his mind. Could it be someone close to them? Someone who wanted to tear them apart? Days turned into weeks, and Friedrich's resolve began to wane. He felt himself spiraling into a pit of despair, plagued by the thoughts of Ingrid's past. He had always believed in their love, but now, doubts crept in like shadows, stealing away the light. He found himself replaying every moment, every conversation, searching for clues that might explain the enigmatic messages. Late one night, after yet another long day at the hospital, Friedrich found himself restless. The hollow silence of the room felt oppressive as he paced back and forth, thoughts racing. He finally decided to open the most recent letter that had arrived, tucked away in his coat pocket. The envelope was plain, a stark contrast to the chaotic emotions swirling within him. With trembling hands, he tore it open, the paper crinkling beneath his grip. As he read the words scrawled across the page, his heart sank deeper into despair. The letter revealed a connection between Ingrid and none other than Anton, his business rival. "You think she's yours, but she has a history with Anton that you know nothing about," it read. "You should ask her about their time together." Friedrich's breath caught in his throat. This was the last thing he wanted to hear. Anton had always been a thorn in his side, a constant reminder of the cutthroat world of business they navigated together. The idea that Ingrid could have had a relationship with him felt like a betrayal he could hardly bear. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered into the darkness, feeling the weight of betrayal settle into the pit of his stomach. "What else don't I know?" He slammed the letter down on the bedside table, the sound echoing in the silent room. Anger and confusion roiled within him, battling with the love he still felt for Ingrid. How could he reconcile these feelings? How could he trust her again if what the letter claimed was true? He looked at Ingrid, her stillness a reminder of all that was at stake. "I can't do this alone," he murmured. "I need you to wake up, Ingrid. I need to know the truth." As he sat in the dim light, clutching her hand tightly, he realized he was at a crossroads. The road ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, but one thing was clear. He would fight for her, for the love they had built over the years, no matter what secrets lay buried in her past. Friedrich Hoffmann sat alone in the dimly lit cafe, an untouched cup of coffee cooling beside him. The air was thick with the aroma of freshly baked pastries, yet he found no comfort in the surroundings. The vibrant chatter of other customers seemed like a distant echo, overshadowed by the turmoil brewing within him. He was a man of wealth and influence, but in this moment, he felt utterly powerless. All he could think about was Ingrid, his beloved wife, lying in a hospital bed, trapped in the depths of a coma after that fateful fall into the icy lake. Determined to uncover the truth about the secrets that had begun to unravel his life, Friedrich knew he needed to dig deeper into Ingrid's past. The anonymous letters, filled with insinuations and half-truths, gnawed at him. They were like shadows looming over his memories of their love, and he couldn't allow them to taint the beautiful history they had built together. He needed to know who had sent those letters, and why they had chosen to target Ingrid, of all people. The first step in his investigation led him to a quaint little bookstore that he remembered Ingrid often visiting during their high school days. As he entered, the bell above the door chimed softly, and he was met with the warm gaze of the storekeeper, an elderly woman with silver hair tied neatly in a bun. "Mr. Hoffmann," she greeted, her voice sweet and gentle. "What brings you here today?" "Hello, Mrs. Myler," he replied, forcing a smile. "I'm hoping you could help me. I'm looking for anyone who might have known Ingrid before we met. I need to understand her past." Mrs. Myler's expression shifted, a flicker of concern crossing her features. Ingrid was a lovely girl, always coming in for books. "There are some people who might know her better than I do. Why do you ask?" Friedrich hesitated, weighing his words. There are some things I've come to learn that have me questioning everything I thought I knew about her. I need to find the truth." With a nod of understanding, Mrs. Mahler led him to the back of the store, where a small group of people often gathered for book clubs. "These are her friends from school. Perhaps they can shed some light on the Ingrid you're missing." As Friedrich approached the table, he felt a mixture of anxiety and determination. The group consisted of 3 women and 1 man, all of whom looked up as he introduced himself. They exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of curiosity and sympathy. "Friedrich, right?" one of the women asked. "Ingrid spoke so highly of you. We've been worried about her." "I appreciate that," he said, his voice steady. "I was hoping you could help me understand more about her life before we met. There are things I need to clarify." The man, a tall figure named Lucas, leaned forward, his brow furrowed in thought. "Ingrid had a life before you, just like everyone else. But I can assure you, she loved you deeply. Then why did she never mention Anton?" Friedrich's voice cut through the air, heavy with jealousy. "I found out they were close, and I need to know what that meant." A tense silence enveloped the group. The women exchanged glances, and Lucas shifted uncomfortably. Anton was charismatic, charming. He began hesitantly, but it was never serious between them. They dated for a short time, but Ingrid always found her way back to you. Why didn't she tell me? Friedrich pressed, frustration creeping into his tone. Sometimes, people keep parts of their past private, especially when they want to protect those they care about. One of the women, a soft-spoken friend named Lena, offered gently. She loved you, Friedrich. That's what mattered to her. Friedrich sighed, feeling the weight of their words. I just want to know everything, so I can understand why this is happening. As the conversation continued, the group shared stories of Ingrid's kindness and spirit during their school years. They spoke of her dreams and aspirations, painting a picture of a vibrant young woman who had always looked ahead. Yet, the mention of Anton lingered in his mind, a dark cloud overshadowing his heart. After leaving the bookstore, Friedrich felt a sense of urgency. He needed to confront Anton directly, to demand answers. The thought of facing his rival filled him with a mix of anger and anxiety, but he resolved that he could not let fear dictate his actions. The next day, he found himself standing outside Anton's sleek office building, the glass facade reflecting the late afternoon sun. Taking a deep breath, he pushed through the revolving door, his heart pounding with each step he took towards the elevator. When the doors opened on the top floor, he strode into the spacious office, where Anton sat, casually reviewing documents. Friedrich, Anton said, looking up with a bemused expression. What brings you here? I didn't expect a visit. You know why I'm here, Friedrich replied, his voice low and tense. We need to talk about Ingrid. Anton's demeanor shifted slightly, his smile fading. I'm aware of the situation. It's tragic. Tragic? You have no idea, Friedrich snapped, the heat of anger rising within him. You were a part of her life before me. I need to know what your relationship was like. Anton leaned back in his chair with a sarcastic smile. Ingrid never paid much attention to me, even in college. I admired her from afar, but nothing ever happened. She was always yours, Friedrich. Friedrich narrowed his eyes, his disbelief shifting into a mix of relief and confusion. Then why these letters? Why bring her name up now? Anton shrugged, his tone remaining casual. I wasn't the one who sent the letters. I have no interest in tarnishing her name. She always deserved the best. Maybe you should ask yourself who's really trying to stir up her past. Friedrich studied Anton's face, searching for any sign of deception. But all he saw was sincerity, a rare glimmer of honesty in a world that felt increasingly murky. If you cared about her at all, you would help me find out who is behind this. As if in response to his desperation, a gust of wind rustled the leaves above him, and for a fleeting moment he felt her presence, as if she were standing beside him, urging him to be strong. He closed his eyes, allowing the memories to wash over him. Their first kiss at the summer fair, the laughter that echoed through their shared adventures, the quiet moments of intimacy that had woven their lives together. Each memory was a thread in the tapestry of their love, a reminder of everything worth fighting for. He rose to his feet, determination surging through him. "I won't let you down," he vowed, clenching his fists. "I'll fight for you, for us. I'll uncover the truth behind those letters and put an end to this madness." His heart raced with renewed purpose. If there were secrets lurking in the shadows of Ingrid's past, he would bring them into the light. He would not rest until he had answers. As he made his way back to the car, Friedrich's mind churned with thoughts of Anton, the enigmatic rival who had been a thorn in his side. He recalled the unsettling conversations he'd had with that anonymous sender, the whispered hints that suggested Ingrid had deeper ties to Anton than he had known. It was infuriating and confusing, but he would not allow those doubts to fester. He needed to confront the truth head-on, no matter how painful it might be. Hours later, Friedrich found himself in front of Anton's lavish office building, the sun having long set and the city lights casting a vibrant glow. He was no longer the man who had stood on the edge of the lake, consumed by despair. He was fueled by determination and a fierce love that refused to be extinguished. With purposeful strides, he entered the building and made his way to Anton's office. The receptionist looked up, surprised. "Mr. Hoffman, do you have an appointment?" "No, but I need to see him," Friedrich replied, his tone leaving no room for debate. The receptionist hesitated, glancing at her watch, but ultimately relented, pointing him down the hall. Friedrich knocked on the door to Anton's office, his heart pounding in his chest. "Anton, we need to talk." "Friedrich." Anton's voice was cool, almost amused as he looked up from his desk, a smirk playing on his lips. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Cut the games, Anton," Friedrich snapped, stepping inside, determination etched on his face. "I know about your connection to Ingrid. You need to tell me everything." Anton leaned back in his chair with a sarcastic smile. "I always admired Ingrid, but I never had a chance with her. Maybe I'm just reminding you that not everyone can be trusted, Friedrich." Friedrich's fists clenched at his sides. "Don't lie to me. I've received letters, hints about your past with her. I need to know the truth." Anton's expression shifted, a flicker of annoyance crossing his features. "Fine. We dated briefly in college, but it was nothing. I moved on. You should too. Then why do I feel like there's more?" Friedrich pressed, his voice rising with frustration. "Why does it feel like you're hiding something?" "Because you're desperate, Friedrich," Anton replied, leaning forward, his eyes narrowing. "You're grasping at straws because you can't face the reality that she may never wake up. You're creating enemies where there are none." Friedrich took a step closer, his voice low and fierce. "I'll find out the truth, Anton. And if you're hiding anything at all, I'll make sure everyone knows." With that, Friedrich stormed out of the office, his heart racing with a mix of anger and determination. He had no intention of letting doubts cloud his love for Ingrid. Whatever secrets lingered in the shadows, he would face them head-on. He would fight for her, for their love, no matter the cost. Friedrich sat in the sterile hospital room, the rhythmic beeping of the machines surrounding Ingrid's bed forming a heartbeat of hope in the otherwise quiet atmosphere. Days had turned into weeks, and yet the world outside felt as if it had stalled, suspended in a state of uncertainty. The last candle of hope flickered within him, dimmed by despair but never extinguished. He had clung to every word the doctors had said, each promise of possibilities that Ingrid might wake up. Dr. Mahler entered the room, his expression serious yet tinged with a hint of optimism. "Mr. Hoffman," he began, leaning slightly forward, "I have some news." Friedrich's heart raced as he looked up, almost afraid of what he might hear. "Ingrid has shown signs of waking up. She's responding to stimuli, and her brain activity is more pronounced than it has been in weeks." "What do you mean by signs?" Friedrich asked, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and hope. Is she going to wake up?" Dr. Myler nodded. "We can't predict when she will fully regain consciousness, but it's a positive development. I suggest you talk to her. Sometimes hearing a familiar voice can help." Friedrich felt tears sting his eyes. "Thank you, doctor," he managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. As the doctor left the room, he took a deep breath, steeling himself. He moved closer to Ingrid's bedside, grasping her hand, which felt so fragile in his. "Ingrid," he said softly, "it's me, Friedrich. I'm here. I've been here every day, waiting for you to come back to me." He felt a rush of emotions as he stared at her serene face, the way her chest rose and fell with each artificial breath. "Please, if you can hear me, fight. Fight to come back. I need you." He spent hours talking to her, recounting their shared memories, the laughter and dreams they had woven together. He spoke of their honeymoon, of the laughter that had echoed around the lake, of the plans they had made for the future. "Remember the time we hiked to the top of that mountain?" he asked, a small smile breaking through his worry. "You were so tired, and I promised you a hot chocolate at the lodge. You complained the whole way down, but I saw that sparkle in your eyes." And just as he finished his story, he felt a tremor in her hand. He looked down in disbelief. "Ingrid," he whispered, his heart pounding in his chest. "Can you hear me?" A slight flicker of her eyelids caught his attention. "Oh my God," he breathed, leaning closer, his heart racing. "Ingrid, please open your eyes. Come back to me." Moments felt like hours as he waited, and suddenly, she blinked. The first sign of life. Tears streamed down Friedrich's face as he whispered her name over and over. "Ingrid, can you hear me?" With a labored breath, she finally opened her eyes, and as her gaze met his, the world around them faded away. "Friedrich," she croaked, her voice barely a whisper, yet it was the sweetest sound he had ever heard. Yes, it's me," he exclaimed, choking back sobs. "I've missed you so much." Ingrid's brow furrowed in confusion as she tried to sit up. "What happened? Where am I?" "You fell into the lake," he explained gently, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. "You've been in a coma for weeks, but you're awake now, and I'm here. I'm right here." Ingrid blinked, her eyes searching his, trying to piece together the fragments of her memory. "I remember us. The honeymoon. It was beautiful." "Yes, it was," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And it still can be. We can make it beautiful again." "Friedrich," she said slowly, her voice gaining strength. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to. I didn't know." "What do you mean?" he asked, a knot forming in his stomach. As she continued to gather her thoughts, the words spilled out in a rush. "I heard things, whispers, but I thought I was dreaming. I don't remember any secrets or betrayals. I don't know what you've been told." Friedrich's heart sank momentarily at the mention of betrayals, those dark shadows that had loomed over him like a storm cloud. "There were letters, Ingrid. Someone was sending me messages. They hinted that you had a connection to Anton." "Anton?" she echoed, her expression shifting to one of bewilderment. "He was just a friend. I never had anything serious with him. I swear." "Friedrich." "I confronted him," Friedrich admitted, feeling a mix of guilt and relief. "He said it was never serious, but the doubts were eating me alive." Ingrid's eyes softened. "I would never betray you, Friedrich. You're my everything. I don't care about the past. I just want to be with you now." With those words, Friedrich felt the weight of the world lift off his shoulders. "Then let's move forward together. I'm not going to let anything tear us apart again." As they held each other's gaze, a sense of peace enveloped them. The fear and uncertainty that had once threatened to drown their love began to recede like the shadows at twilight. The next few days saw Ingrid continuing to recover, her strength returning with each passing moment. They shared stories, laughter, and even moments of silence that spoke volumes. Friedrich stayed by her side, reading to her and sharing updates about the world outside. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the room in hues of gold, Ingrid turned to Friedrich, her expression serious. "What about the letters? What if the sender tries again? I don't want to lose you to doubts." Friedrich took a deep breath, feeling the need to protect her from any lingering shadows. "I'll handle it. I've already confronted Anton, but I'll make sure he knows that our love is untouchable." Just then, the door swung open, and in walked Anton, his face betraying a mix of arrogance and trepidation. "I came to check on Ingrid," he said, glancing at her and then fixing his gaze on Friedrich. Friedrich stood up, his posture rigid. You shouldn't be here. I need to explain, Anton insisted, his tone defensive. I never meant for any of this to happen. The letters were a mistake. I never wanted to hurt you, Ingrid. Ingrid's brow furrowed. What letters? Friedrich stepped forward, his voice low and controlled. You need to leave, Anton. Your games end here. No. Anton pushed back, his eyes flashing. Ingrid deserves to know the truth. I was trying to protect her from the truth of her past. There are things about her family. Enough. Friedrich shouted, the tension in the room thickening. You've done enough damage. She doesn't need to hear your lies. But Ingrid's eyes darted between the two men, confusion flashing across her face. What are you talking about? Friedrich softened his tone, turning to Ingrid. He's trying to manipulate you, Ingrid, just like he did before. You don't need to listen to him. Friedrich, please, she pleaded, her voice trembling. I want to understand. Anton seized the moment, stepping closer. Ingrid, you were always perfect for Friedrich, but you never wanted to see the truth. Do you think you can trust someone like that, with so much envy around you? Stop it. Friedrich interjected. You're not going to use her vulnerability against her. This is about us, not your twisted games. But Ingrid's eyes were locked on Anton, a mixture of curiosity and fear clouding her expression. What secrets? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. As Anton prepared to speak, Friedrich felt a surge of protectiveness wash over him. Ingrid, listen to me. Whatever he says, it doesn't change the love we have. I'm not letting him drag you back into a past that doesn't matter. In that moment, Ingrid took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. I want to know the truth, Friedrich, but I want to find it together. Friedrich's heart swelled with pride as he watched her strength emerge. Then we will. Together. As the confrontation unfolded, Friedrich felt the weight of the past begin to lift. He realized that love, true love, could weather any storm. The darkness that had once threatened to engulf them was now just a distant memory, overshadowed by the light of their unwavering bond. With a newfound determination, they faced the future, ready to conquer any challenges that lay ahead, hand in hand, heart to heart.